listening to Live the Dream Media, exclusively on the Live the Dream Media Network.
Thank you for tuning in to the Live the Dream Media Network. Our featured broadcast will begin shortly.
You've got a voice, but are you ready for a global audience? Don't just settle for standard studio rental. At Live the Dream Media, we amplify your voice by broadcasting your podcast completely live on our exclusive online radio network. Whether they're down the street or across the world, your listeners can lock in live on YouTube, Meta, and the Live the Dream Media app. Why choose live? Because real-time connection builds a loyal community, extends your reach further than ever, and turns a simple recording into a massive digital event. Stop waiting on the edit. Go live, build your crowd, and live the dream with Live the Dream Media today.
Radio evolves more as the years progress, and it is only becoming better. Introducing the Live the Dream Media app. Catch your favorite music 24/7 and tune into live podcasts, or catch up on your own time with our on-demand library. No matter where you travel in the world, you can be anywhere on the planet and stay connected. Download the Live the Dream Media app for free today on the Apple App Store and Google Play, and experience radio reimagined.
Ready to go live? Take your show to the next level and host your podcast at the Live the Dream Media Professional Studio. From our fully equipped space, you can seamlessly connect with your audience and live stream in real time straight to YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, and more. We handle the technical side so you can focus entirely on your content. When you book with us, you get access to top-tier microphones, premium production gear, and full support from our professional audio engineers, all with flexible booking times designed to fit your schedule. Go live with our studio team today. Visit ltdmedia.net or call 520-373-2059 to book your session and live your dream live on air. Here at Live the Dream Media.
Think the music is the only thing rocking this station? Think again. We are bringing you the absolute best in live broadcasting all week long. Turn your dials to the Live the Dream Media Network for our powerhouse lineup of live podcasts airing Monday through Friday. Start your mornings right. Wake up every single Monday through Friday morning from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. with Wake Up Live, hosted by Christopher D. Simone. Stick around Mondays at 9 a.m. for the Marana and Oro Valley Experience with David Samorano and Clint Peak. Then tap into your local community with Southwest Flavor with Ron Arenas at 9 a.m. And don't miss Sobriety, Spirituality, and Sales with Mike Curry every Tuesday morning at 10 a.m. Get informed at 9 a.m. with Inside Track, hosted by Bruce Ash and Eb Wilkinson. On Thursdays at 10 a.m., we are talking sports with Ron Arenas and Will Pena. Catch former NBA star player Bob Elliott on The Bob Elliott Show every Friday morning at 9 a.m. for 30 minutes of incredible conversations with amazing guests. Lastly, keep an eye out for The Clint Peak Show, popping up at various times to share the stories of amazing people's lives. No matter the day, your story is worth telling, and we are bringing those stories to you live. Tune in to our live podcasts right here on the Live the Dream Media Network. Don't miss a single minute.
You are listening to Live the Dream Media, exclusively on the Live the Dream Media Network.
The views and opinions expressed on Inside Track are those of the hosts and their guests, which do not necessarily reflect those of LTD Media or their sponsors. But they should.
Welcome to Inside Track with Bruce Ash and Ed Wilkinson on the Live the Dream Media Network.
Hello, everyone, and a very pleasant morning to you wherever you may be. Welcome to a special edition of Inside Track. Bruce Ash and
Eb Wilkinson
coming to you live from the Live the Dream Media Studios in Marana, Arizona. Eb?
Hey, Bruce. Thanks for joining us on Live the Dream Media platform, app, X, Facebook, YouTube, any of the other platforms out there. The first half of today's show is brought to you by Essential Pest Control. Call Essential Pest to keep your home or business free from all forms of insects, vermins, and weeds today. Call them at 886-3029. Summer has arrived, and there are tons of bugs, pests, and vermin invading homes and offices. Bugs fear Essential. Call them today to protect your home or business.
So Manny showed up at my house yesterday to do the exterior. And he says he rang the doorbell. I was working on stuff at that time and just really engrossed in it. And he comes around to the kitchen where I was at the kitchen table on my computer, and he kind of just gently taps the window. I thought I was going to pee in my pants. Anyway, he did a great job.
I don't think they can fix that.
No. Also supporting Inside Track is Eb's great company, Wilkinson Wealth Management. I'm a client along with my sister, if you haven't heard that before. Eb does a great job for our family and many other longtime friends. And our other longtime sponsor, Tucson Iron and Metal Surplus, also supports us. And my family-run company is a new sponsor, Paul Ash Commercial Real Estate, where we make good things happen every day. Eb?
Hey, we are pleased to welcome Ken Rapoza. He's a seasoned business and foreign affairs reporter with more than 20 years' experience. He's stationed abroad as staff reporter for the Wall Street Journal in Sao Paulo and was a former senior contributor for Forbes from 2011 to 2023, writing about China, India, Russia, Brazil, Mexico, and other developing countries. His editorial work has appeared in diverse publications like the Boston Globe, USA Today, where he's given the unflattering task of taking an opposing viewpoint in support of China tariffs at the start of the trade war, and more recently can be found in Newsweek and the Daily Caller. Ken writes for the Coalition for a Prosperous America and does a radio and podcast circuit to international issues. Ken lives and works from a small farm and beach town in southern Massachusetts with his family. Before we get to his report on strategic shipbuilding this morning, Ken, tell our audience about the work that the Coalition for a Prosperous America does, and specifically the areas you cover.
Sure. So thanks for having me on. Appreciate it. So Coalition for a Prosperous America, we're a nonprofit organization. We represent organizations that we represent companies that produce goods in the United States, whether that is a rancher or a company that makes solar panels, for example, multinationals that make solar panels. So, and our goal is to make sure that those companies can have a return on their investment in the United States and grow the production of manufactured goods in the United States. So that's our main goal. We advocate for that for those members on Capitol Hill. And my role at the coalition, we'll just call it CPA for your audience there, is to I provide in-house intelligence for the staff and our members, and I write web articles for our website, which can be found at prosperousamerica.org, along with our economics team as well. So that's who we are. We've been around for about 15 years, and I've been with them for about, I'm going to say 6 years now.
Good stuff.
Yeah, Ken, the world's economy runs on the ocean. 90% of the global trade moves by sea. If China dominates global shipping, global shipbuilding, and global sea lanes, then China dominates the flow of goods that power the U.S. So everything from fuel, fertilizer to electronics and food relies on a secure maritime system. Without a strong navy to safeguard these lanes and without a shipbuilding base to sustain it, we're now more vulnerable to global shocks and geopolitical manipulation. Talk about that.
Well, let's put it this way. For a lay audience that doesn't really think about maritime and shipbuilding on a regular basis. So we are obviously the number one trading nation in the world, right? We export a lot, but we import even more, obviously. No other country compares. Maybe you could say the EU, if you want to consider that one big country, maybe they compare. They make more ships than we do in the EU. We have maybe 1% of the entire shipbuilding, So if you were to look at all the ships that are traversing the ocean and with all the containers on them that are importing into the ports of New Jersey and California and Los Angeles, for example, none of those ships almost none of them, probably 99% of them, were not built in the United States. They were mostly all built in Asia, actually. Japan, South Korea, and China's rising quickly, which much to the dismay, by the way, of Japan and South Korea. And so you have a market where it's sort of like being, let's imagine, well, I mean, Saudi Arabia is in the same position, right? They're one of the biggest oil exporters in the world, but they don't build oil tankers or something. You would think that would be a no-brainer for a country that is a large trading nation like the United States. It would have at least some semblance of a maritime industry for transoceanic voyages, right? So we would be making more LNG tankers. We would be making more oil tankers because, as you know, we're the number one LNG exporter in the world. Why aren't we the number one makers of LNG tankers? We're making them here. We are, but we're a small percentage compared to Asia. So when you think about it, you're the biggest guy on the block, but yet you rely on Asia for almost everything when it comes to ships. So if you could even increase that a little bit, going from 1% to 3%, which is still tiny, you would radically transform the maritime industry in the United States, from people who work at shipyards building ships in Philadelphia and elsewhere in Virginia, for example, to the crews that are in charge of those ships traversing the Atlantic and the Pacific. We don't have that now. We lost it years ago, and the government talks about bringing it back, and we'll see how that works out over the next year or so.
Well, let's talk about that for a minute. We've interviewed former Secretary of the Navy John Lehman. We've interviewed Seth Cropsey about holes in the naval strength. So when we saw your piece on the CPA about the ships, we knew we had to talk to you. Let's go in the Wayback Machine. When, why, and how did America get out of the shipbuilding business?
Well, it's just like every other outsourcing opportunity. They decided that Japan and South Korea could build it cheaper, and they decided to build it over there. Now, again, we build our own military vessels in the United States. We certainly don't outsource the making of nuclear submarines. Well, we do actually. I take that back. We do partner now with Australia and the UK to make those submarines. Not that we're saving a lot of money by making them there, as opposed to making them in Japan or South Korea, let's say, and certainly China. We would never do such a thing. But we make mostly the defense vessels. But of course, again, that's a market that has a time limit, right? We're not going to need 100 nuclear submarines. Anyone who survived during the Cold War knows that. My father worked at Raytheon. He built nuclear submarines. He worked for the submarine signal division in Portsmouth, Rhode Island at the time of the Cold War. And when that Cold War ended, he was out of a job and he was going door to door selling Electrolux vacuum cleaners. So we really know what the defense industry is like when it comes to shipbuilding. It's unreliable and it's short term. You need to be building LNG tankers. You need to be building tugboats. You need to be building barges that go up and down the Mississippi, shipping grain out to Louisiana from the Midwest. and we are doing that because of a law called the Jones Act. But as far as which has been waived, actually, which we could talk about, which is what the article you are referring to, which stems from the Jones Act being waived. And
Right.
so, these are things that you are sending signals to, American shipbuilders, whether they're American owned or whether they're foreign owned, building in the United States. You're sending them a signal that says that we can just globalize this industry even more and make it so that the ships that are delivering goods up and down the East Coast and West Coast can come from anywhere in the world. That was not the case until recently when Trump waived what's called the Jones Act, and that's the article you were referencing. So, again, we build Navy ships, we build the aircraft carriers, but again, we don't need 100 aircraft carriers. All right, so that's not a market. That's fine. We have a lot of money in the big beautiful bill to build new Coast Guard cutters and so on. Okay, that's fine, and that's very important. But again, once those are built, it's over. You're not gonna build 10 more of them. So that's where we are right now when it comes to shipbuilding. And one of the biggest protectors of the shipbuilding industry would be the Jones Act, which says if you're going to ship goods up and down the rivers in the United States or from Florida to Massachusetts, it's got to be on a U.S. made ship, or at the very least, a U.S. flagged ship, meaning that a U.S. company bought the ship from somewhere else and it's crewed by an American crew. All right, so that's the very least that should be happening, and that at least protects the shipping industry in the United States and the shipbuilders in the United States. But again, as we said, and this is the article you're referencing, that law, that 1920s law, the Jones Act, has been waived by Trump. And we can get into that if you want to. But that law has been waived by Trump. So that means that, any international shipper, like a Chinese shipper, can be shipping, gasoline from a port in Louisiana up to Boston if it wants to.
So, Ken, before we get into that, when you talk about strategic shipbuilding, what makes a shipbuilding program strategic rather than simply industrial policy or defense spending?
Well, it becomes strategic again on the defense side, right? So, strategic, how Capitol Hill thinks of strategy for the most part is always going to be framed within the defense industry, right? So, whenever anything that comes out of Capitol Hill that has the word strategy attached to it, you'll soon see that a few sentences later in the report will also have the term national security, which mostly relates to China, and it relates to the defense industry. So, but there is another way to look at it too, and it is commercial strategy. It is, if you want to be a commercial powerhouse, if you want to be a maritime power, you need to have a shipping industry. It only makes sense. You don't have to have 20% of the market, but 1% is pretty damning. You could have 3%. And again, if you got there, that's threefold increase in the shipping industry in the United States. And again, as I said, very simple to understand for people who are not following this topic at all. You are the number one exporter of LNG. You should be that LNG that's going to Europe should be on American-made ships, made by American workers, not a ship that cost $10 billion that was imported and made 90% of it in South Korea. Even though South Korea is our ally. And I will say this about South Korea: if not for Hanwha Ocean, which is a South Korean company, I don't even know what the Philly shipyard would be doing, the Philadelphia shipyard would be doing today. Hanwha Ocean basically saved the Philly shipyard, and we're building LNG tankers there. We're building other ships there, maritime ships, not defense related, commercial ships in that shipyard. But again, it's a South Korean company that's doing it, but it's in the United States by United States workers. So that's a plus. We'd like to see more of that. I mean, obviously, right? It's like, the auto industry, for example. Do you want all cars made in Mexico? I mean, well, they could be. All cars could literally be made in Mexico. And one of the reasons why they're here is because, states have different laws, or because of their contract with United Auto Workers and so on. But it makes a lot of sense in the future if you were not to protect the auto industry, to just make all cars in Mexico. It would certainly be a lot easier to do that. Certainly be a lot cheaper to do that for the multinationals. Not necessarily cheaper for you and I. Mexico has been making American automobiles for years, and certainly automobile prices haven't necessarily come down. They haven't gone up like food, but they haven't come down in any meaningful way, despite the fact that Mexican labor is paid a lot less than what we get paid. So, it's the same thing with shipping. A big item, a big product that pays very well, middle class labor, long term, for a country that is a maritime power, or used to be, right? At least on the defense side. Of course we are on the defense side. we're unmatched. But on the commercial side, we're lacking big time, and we could do more. So will, and again, Capitol Hill wants to do more, but we'll see what they do to make that happen. And by waiving the Jones Act again, by waiving that, that just sends a signal to companies that are going to build barges or whatever in the United States to say, oh well, I don't know if I'm going to do that right now because now I have an Italian barge or a Greek barge or a Chinese barge going up and down going from Louisiana to Massachusetts instead of mine. So I'm going to stand down a little while, and that's not a signal you want to send to American shipyards.
Ken,
Bruce.
welcome to Inside Track. Thanks for joining us today. I'm friends with a great man who ran Sun Oil for many years. And before he took on the CEO position, he actually ran Sun's shipbuilding yard in Philadelphia. It had about 5,000 workers there. The Sun fleet was impressive in those days, and nearly all of their merchant trips for Sun were made in America. Bob has told me this story several times about the morning he had to tell those 5,000 plus shipbuilding workers that that shipyard was going to be closed by the company. He said it was probably the saddest day in his over 34 years at Sun Oil when that happened. The reason, and you've discussed it, the reason for the change was unions and the cost of building here in America. And you mentioned we're the largest world supplier of LNG. How in the world could an American industry been so short-sighted to end most of commercial shipbuilding in this country? And how do we put that back together again? All of the shipyards, which don't exist anymore or haven't been modernized in like 1,000 years, and laborers, training, and so on. This is not something that you fix tomorrow. This could be a 10 or 15 year kind of a thing. And is there enough time to do it?
Well, there is enough time to do it if you have industrial policies in place that say we're going to do it, right? So you could use things like sectoral tariffs, like Section 232s, for example. That's one way. And I don't know how that would work out off the top of my head right now. I could definitely recommend someone who knows this stuff inside out for you if you ever want to get into that. But let's keep in mind that the USTR recently did an investigation into China shipbuilding, right? That's the Section 301 investigation, and they decided that there's unfair trade practices with China, so we're going to put tariffs on Chinese ships coming into the United States. Remember that.
Right.
And then the Trump administration, despite that finding, said they stood down. They said, we're not going to do that. And again, I don't know how great of a signal that was if all of a sudden Hanwha is going to say, well, great, China's less Chinese ships are coming into the country. But, China said, okay, we're going to hit you with the similar tariff. So American LNG coming on American flagged ship into China is going to be hit with a similar bill. And so they decided to eliminate that tariff, at least until November. Whether or not that's going to be reinstated, I don't know. But you have to have some sort of protection for the industry. Again, one of the things that the government likes to do is say, well, we're going to build, or Trump likes to do is say, we need more money in defense spending. We're going to build more we're going to build more, aircraft carriers. We're going to build more submarines. Okay. But again, as you know, that's a very short-term way of building a shipyard. You don't need 100 nuclear submarines. We saw what happened with Electric Boat in Groton, Connecticut when the Cold War ended. Those things vanished, and they're now basically, a lot of those ports now in Connecticut on the Long Island Sound are basically harbors to import wind turbines and poles to install, offshore wind instead of making ships. They're doing it back. They're starting to do it today again because of the defense spending, but that was the result of years of just offshoring commercial shipping to Asia. And then, of course, when China enters the game, it's over. You're never going to beat them on price. So how you get it back, you have to have some sort of protective tariff involved. You got to have some sort of government signal that says, we are going to support local shipbuilding. The worst signal is to say, we're going to extend, once again, the Jones Act waiver, right? So Trump waived that law. It's waived again as of this week or this weekend. It's going into November now. There are some caveats to the new extension. You got to get permission. So the Chinese, tanker isn't going to be able to take gasoline from Louisiana to Massachusetts probably anymore, but who knows, that they might still be allowed. They're going to be a little bit more stringent on who can ship what and what items can be shipped, with oil and gas being the number one items, and I believe food commodities being another. But if you ask me what is a way to send a demand signal to the United States to build ships, well, I could tell you a way not to do it, which is to keep extending the Jones Act waiver, which just tells shipbuilders in the United States that, I'm not going to invest in XYZ because I don't know how long this waiver is going to last. It was supposed to only last 3 months. Now it's lasting 6 months. And who knows, maybe they come up with another reason to extend it again. That's not the way to do it. But again, you have to come up with some sort of industrial policy to protect the local shipyards and make sure that they can get a return. They can see a return on their investment. They know that what they put to work in Philly shipyard, for example, they believe, at least, of course, no business is perfect, but they believe at least that they can make some money there. And until recently, until Hanwha came into Philly shipyard, the idea was, forget it. We're just going to go to Asia and we're just going to go to, to China.
So
It's tough. It's definitely not easy. I really don't know. I mean, I know some of the guys at the Prosperous America, they will run down all the ways of putting tariffs on tonnage and so on, which make it less attractive. Okay, fine. But at the end of the day, it's going to come down to the big shipping companies and what they think, right? Or what they want to spend on a boat, and what benefits they get from buying in the United States.
So there is some changes within Congress. From your article, I quote, "If we want to restore balance to the oceans, we need to look at our greatest advantage, our international allies and partners," said House Committee Chairwoman Republican Young Kim from California. "We must forge an aggressive shipbuilding alliance with South Korea and Japan. By integrating our industrial capabilities, we can create a counterweight that Beijing cannot match." So how difficult is it going to be to compete with China in shipbuilding? And why is this balance so important? And can can the Japanese and Koreans actually create that kind of synergy that this industry needs?
Oh, I believe that Japan, South Korea, and the United States are perfect allies in this. And I think Young Kim also mentioned some other countries, but those were always the main ones. Okay. And again, as we mentioned before, Hanwha Ocean, Philly Shipyard, right? They're the ones who are putting money to work in the United States to build LNG tankers, for example. They're building other things too, but they are putting money to work here to do that. So, General Dynamics, I guess they could do it too, but companies like the South Koreans, they're doing it. And Japan, supposedly, remember this big deal that Trump had? Japan committed a certain amount of money. I don't know how much, how many hundreds of millions of dollars it was, or billions of dollars it was, that Japan was supposedly going to put into the United States, and one of those was in maritime. Okay, so there is that idea that the three countries can work together, and that might mean the United States maybe is making an engine, or they're doing most of they're putting the ship together in a shipyard, but a lot of the heavy equipment is really coming in from Japan and South Korea. So that could be one way that we see shipbuilding return to the United States for the big commercial shipbuilding, right? The transoceanic shipbuilding, and even to some degree, the U.S. LNG up and down the Pacific and Atlantic coastlines. My take is, from what I'm hearing in Washington, is that they believe that the United States cannot do it alone, and that they're going to have to partner
Right.
with Japan and South Korea, which is pretty much already happening. And so how that plays out depends on a countrywide basis, or a company. What Hanwha, they're just doing it themselves. They're building here. They settled on investing in Philadelphia and doing it here. How Japan does it, I don't know. They haven't done anything yet, but I think we'll see action in that regard on the commercial side. Probably, you can get an announcement any day, right? But probably within the next year or two, you'll see that, because it's a big issue on Capitol Hill. So, and Japan and South Korea, they want to be they want to be Trump's ally, because they don't want to be hit with tariffs. And investment is one way that they're able to have leverage over U.S. trade policy in that regard.
Ken, this must be a serious consideration in Congress. A guy who is not normally someone who cooperates with a Republican, Representative Brad Sherman, also from California, noted, again from your article, that working with Japan and South Korea to build new ships was fine, but we needed more ships and had to think about think hard about whether the United States companies want to be invested in this market at the present time. What do you make of that? And what's going to be needed in Congress to stimulate this kind of shipbuilding?
Brad Sherman hits the nail on the head there, right? He says we can count on Japan and South Korea, but if all we're going to be doing in an American shipyard is basically just installing Japanese and Asian parts into a big hull, then we're really not revitalizing American shipbuilding. It's like saying we're going to make furniture, but all we're doing is screwing the legs on a sofa in a factory in North Carolina and then driving it to a warehouse, right? So we're not making the furniture; we're basically screwing legs on a sofa
Yeah.
that was made in Italy. So he doesn't want that. That's his argument, right? We don't really want that. We want to be equal partners, or we want to be able to do it ourselves, even at least for the most part, make it ourselves. And when we're again, I don't want to say we're not there because of Hanwha Ocean. Hanwha Ocean is there. I don't know if they're importing a lot of stuff from South Korea. I'm sure they are, right, as well. But I think you're going to have some sort of protection in the industry, and again, whether it's tariffs based on tonnage or what, I don't know. I'm not. I know this is what we talk about at the Coalition for Prosperous America. That's one avenue, but I'm not hearing I'm not hearing that sort of protection coming out of the Senate or the House. I'm not hearing that that's on the table yet. So, we will see. Things move pretty quick in Washington. We'll see where they stand on it. But right now, I don't see them saying we're going to have some sort of protection for this industry. And again, the Jones Act waiver is an
That's
example of not protection. And the House, I mean, the Democrats and Republicans both are against for the most part. There's bipartisan action, bipartisan, negativity on the waiver, right? They both did
It's a
not
head
want that.
scratcher. It really is a head scratcher. You just wonder what's going on behind the scenes. Ab, you
Well,
have some more
and
questions.
then following up on Mr. Sherman, he said if you want to revitalize this sector, you have to invest in so much. You have to invest in the domestic supply chain for parts used to build the ships so that we're not only importing and doing final assembly. We need a countless number of products made here, from engines and cables to coatings. We need to reverse this trend of offshoring, and oppose any proposal that makes it easier to move domestic shipbuilding and even ship repair overseas. So that's surprisingly, in my view, that's a valid point.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And again, you see that Brad Sherman's pretty good. I mean, he is a smart member, and he comes up with a lot of strong nationalist takes on economic matters in on Capitol Hill. He's one of the better ones, right? He knows the topic, and of course he's in California, so of course I don't know. I forget off the top of my head if he's I don't think he's does San Diego. I think he's more of the LA Hollywood area. I'm not sure,
Yeah, I think he's
but
in LA County.
yeah, but you think what?
I think he's in LA County or Orange County.
Yeah, right. So, he's probably doesn't have the San Diego guy,
No.
shipyards there. But again,
Or
he
long.
he knows, yeah, he knows of them, right? He knows that's an important part of the California economy, right? Would be shipbuilding in California, and not just recreational ships like sailboats, right, and military vessels, but commercial ships. I mean, the port of Los Angeles is receiving Asian ships every day, right? Asian flag ships, Asian built ships, Asian crews every single day. Big, large containers that are all coming into the LA port, and not one of them is built in the United States, let alone crewed by an American crew. So, there's another group called the American Maritime Partnership, and they represent a lot of the shipbuilders in the United States, and they have come out against the waiver extension because, again, their argument is that we want to have a signal to make more of this stuff in the United States. And again, there is bipartisan support for this, but here we have the extension. So, I wish I had a better answer. I mean, there is one argument that the whole waiver is not even illegal in the first place, right? But that hasn't stopped the Trump administration in the past with the emergency so-called Liberation Day tariffs, which was the International Economic Emergency Powers Act tariffs that the Supreme Court scrapped. But these this action here for the Jones Act is supposed to be you can waive it if there's an emergency. Let's say the military needs oil and we don't have enough tankers that can get oil to our military ships in Virginia. So we gotta hire these Mexican ships. That's a reason to waive it. That's the real reason. And you have to tell Congress why you're doing it. And we don't really. And Congress is saying that they don't know why. They haven't received any notice as to why that's happened. So they've all opposed. They pretty much anyone who's talked about it has opposed it on both sides of the aisle. So I don't know if there will be any challenge to it in the days ahead that ends the waiver because they're in some sort of a legal challenge. I have not heard of any legal challenge off the top of my head right now. But this has just been extended, over the last 48 to 72 hours. So maybe something will come of that. But we'll have to wait and see.
So, Ken, talk about last year's one big, mostly beautiful bill and the $25 billion investment being made to build 17 icebreakers and 2 cutter ships.
Right. Oh, yes, the icebreakers. I think that was in partnership with Norway, I think, right? Because Norway is
So
a big player.
is
in
that where they're
market.
building them?
No, it would be sort of the same thing that Young Kim is talking about, where it's a partnership. So we'll build part of the ship, and then I think it's Norway and not Finland, but I'm pretty sure it's Norway. They will also build part of the ship. I don't know, exactly how that's how that's come about. I don't follow that closely, but that's one way that the government sends a signal to say, we believe in the Arctic trade route in the future. We want to build some icebreakers. Norway's the pro at doing this. We are not. We're going to tag team with them, and we're going to build it with Norway. And it's the same thing as you hear being said on Capitol Hill about we're going to build these big container ships with the Japanese and the South Koreans. They're the pros at it. They're the ones who do these big super tankers, and we're gonna build it with them. So this is this, and again, the good thing about the icebreaker is I believe these would be commercial vessels, unlike the other money that's going for Coast Guard, which is what we consider the military defense contract spend, right? Which I think is the most of the money. Actually, the big beautiful bill for ships really was going to Coast Guard. I think there was something else in there too for shipbuilding, but I forgot what it was. Sorry about that. But there might have been some more in there as well.
Well, the icebreakers are a pretty big investment in keeping our ability to do
Transit.
both commercial and transit and so on, and even for military in the Arctic zone. Correct?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, we had Trump that wanted to take over Greenland because he believes Arctic is a future security angle for the United States, right? And securing the hemisphere, the America's hemisphere. But again, we're not. And actually, China has recently. China considers itself a near Arctic country, and they got ships now that can traverse to Europe, going up
Right.
through Siberia across the Arctic, right, to get into Europe a lot faster. So they're building these ships too. The United States, unfortunately, because again, China, the defense contractor, defense is and national security is the main driver in Capitol Hill. That's what gets the action. That's what gets the money. That's what gets the appropriation. The other thing that lights fire under their seats is when you talk about China. So again, we're going to the moon. Why? Because China wants to go to the moon. We're building icebreakers. Why? Because China's building icebreakers. And even though they're not an Arctic country, now all of a sudden they declare themselves to be one. They're partners with China, with Russia on everything now. And so they're going to tag team with the Russians, and they're going to head into the Arctic. And by doing that, it enables China to ship goods from the ports in Guangzhou, Shanghai, of course, up the Arctic into Europe at less days. I think it's 20 days less. And that makes things cheaper. So that gives China an advantage. So it's not necessarily a military operation, China not necessarily thinking of this in a defense strategic way. They're thinking of this as how do I make my goods, my commercial enterprise here in China Inc. How do I make China Inc. more competitive and something that unmatched and unrivaled around the world? And so
Last question.
things that Chinese are thinking now.
Ken, if you were advising the White House today, what are the 2 or 3 investments you would make first to rebuild America's shipbuilding capacity?
Oh, wow. You got me. Okay. Well, one thing I would say, you don't extend the Jones Act. And then you might say something like, we're going to give the standard ones, right? You're going to give tax breaks to, we need new LNG tankers, or we need oil tankers. We're going to give tax breaks to that. Or if you're shipping on this American-made, American flagship across the Atlantic or Pacific, you're going to get this sort of, tax discount or whatever, tariff break. Who knows? Maybe it could be something like that. You're not going to have to pay a tariff on the imported good. I don't know, but those would be up for debate. And again, if you want to really dig into this deeper, guys to talk to on this who really have thought about this every day, because completely in their wheelhouse, is the American Maritime Partnership. I don't know if you've ever heard of them, but these guys have really, this is their bread and butter. So they will come up with every bullet point that you can possibly imagine as to what to pitch to Congress on how to keep the shipbuilding industry alive and go from 1% of the market to, let's say, 3%, as I said earlier, which is a threefold increase, which is pretty good, even though you're still nothing compared to the Asians. So I think you would have to send the government signal. One, get rid of Jones Act waiver. Don't extend it anymore. There has been changes to it, right? It's not free for all now. It's not Chinese flagged ships and Chinese made ships shipping crude oil up and down the East Coast. That's probably not going to happen anymore, is my hunch. Okay, unless there's no American ship that can do it and no Italian ship or whatever, and only the Chinese vessel docked in Panama is able to do it, then maybe that's going to be the case. Maybe they'll get the call. They'll get the bid from Exxon, right? Or Phillips 66. The refiners will give them a call. But definitely do not extend that anymore. Maybe even end it, but I don't see that happening. The extension is an extension. It's probably going to continue to November, barring lawsuits. And the other thing would be, you have some sort of tax incentive that says, hey, if you're shipping this good on an American-made, American flagship, then you get a tariff waiver or a tax benefit on it, just like we've done with solar, for example, under the Inflation Reduction Act. You have to give companies some sort of signal that says, I'm in one of the most expensive countries in the world, making one of the most expensive items in the world. I need some support. And if that comes in the form of taxes or in the form of some sort of tariff relief, if you're shipping goods from Asia into the United States on an American-made, American flagship, maybe that's a signal. Maybe that's a solution. I haven't heard anybody talk about that yet. I don't know if the American Maritime Partnership thinks that's a good idea, but it's something that can be discussed. We at Coalition for a Prosperous America have talked about things like tonnage. And if you look at our website, prosperousamerica.org, you can look at our trade counsel, Charles Benoit. He's written on this topic extensively. So that could be a solution as well, looking at tonnage and putting tariffs, or based on that would give some incentive to the U.S. shipbuilder as well. So those are some bullet points right there. I would say that Capitol Hill can think about. And these are things, honestly, that I'm not hearing Capitol Hill guys talk about. Despite the fact that they're against the Jones Act waiver, they want more shipbuilding in the United States because they all love it. It's great labor for the Democrats. They love union labor. They love that. You're right. Diverse group of people that work in the ship industry. Perfect for both sides. But I don't hear them coming up with a lot of solutions. They're against the Jones Act waivers, but I'm not hearing a lot on the solution side, and we need to see more of that. I presented you with a few. ProsperousAmerica.org will give you some other ideas as well. And the American Maritime Partnership, those guys are on the case. And this is their wheelhouse fully. They know it. They know the topic really well, and I advise you to check out what we said on this on our company and our website, Prosperous America and American Maritime, if you want to really dive deep into this.
Thanks for your generous time that you spent with us here this morning, Ken. Hope to have you and some of your colleagues on the show at a later time. That's the Coalition for a Prosperous America. They are a great source. I've been tracking them now for the last couple of months. Thanks for joining us. We're going to go ahead and play
Ken.
a couple of minutes of our commercials from our great supporters. We need to pay the Live the Dream man. Stay tuned. No channel flipping. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Inside Track with Bruce Ash on the Live the Dream Media Network. Now a word from our sponsor.
Hi, it's me.
And
Bugs fear the blue trucks from Essential Pest Control.
Go blue at Essential Pest Control. We'll eliminate those bugs, bees, and termites. And stop paying too much to that national provider. Buy local for great service and affordable rates. Call Essential Pest Control because termites fear the blue.
Run for your life!
Call for the blue trucks from Essential Pest Control. 886-3029. That's 886-3029. Online at essentialpest.com.
This is Eb Wilkinson with Wilkinson Wealth Management, where we manage money for gun owners. What does it mean to retire comfortably and remain comfortably retired? It means designing a plan that allows you to do the things you want to do, outpace inflation, and never run out of money in your lifetime. If you want to retire comfortably and remain comfortably retired, call me, Eb Wilkinson, at 777-1911. That's 777-1911 or WilkinsonWealthMGMT.com.
I'm proud to welcome my good friends at Tucson Iron and Metal Retail to Inside Track as an advertiser. Jamie Kipper and her staff are conservation experts. They sell round and square steel tubing, metal plate and roofing materials, as well as new and used steel, aluminum, and stainless steel to ranchers, artists, interior designers, roofers, as well as you do-it-yourselfers out there. Tucson Iron and Metal Retail is open Monday through Fridays, 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m., and Saturdays, 8 a.m. to noon. Tucson Iron and Steel Retail, 701 East 36th Street. Call 520-209-1576. That's 520-209-1576, or go to TucsonIronRetail.com. Come by and be sure to ask for Jamie. Tucson Iron and Steel Retail. This is what conservation and repurposing is all about.
Does your ordinary radio feel a little limited? If you're looking for a new way to listen, it's time for a fresh start. Introducing the Live the Dream Media app, your premier destination and a new level up for digital radio. Over the last 2 years, we've found new ways to ensure your digital radio experience is the best it can possibly be. From live podcasts that spark new perspectives to a 24/7 soundtrack of live music, and even our built-in merch store. We've built a platform that is convenient, high quality, and simple to navigate. But we're only just getting started. Catch all of our shows weekly and join the Live the Dream Media family today and help us change the airwaves forever. Download it for free on the App Store or Play Store today. Live the dream. The dream starts now.
Welcome back to Inside Track with Bruce Ash on the Live the Dream Media Network. Now back to our show.
Welcome back to Inside Track. This portion of the show brought to you by Eb's great company, Wilkinson Wealth Management. Eb helps my family, and he can help you. Let Eb comfortably guide you and your family into a secure retirement and stay comfortably retired. Wilkinson Wealth Management. Call him today at 777-1911. Eb?
Hey, and Inside Track is also brought to you by Essential Pest Control. Call the Essential team at 886-3029. Tucson Iron and Metal Retail has supported this show since 2017 and is a resource to builders, ranchers, farmers. They have got great steel products for your home projects as well. Call them at 209-1576. And Bruce's family-run company, Paul Ash Commercial Real Estate, where his great team makes great things happen every day. Call them at 795-2100. Let's look at some headlines before we close out today.
Yeah. We haven't done this in a while. Ken was very generous with his time. He went a little overtime for us, but
very cerebral.
Some very interesting FBI information yesterday. They touted 6,000 arrests and 44% homicide drop in 1 year into Trump's D.C. crackdown. Director Patel also says the Capitol is safer than it has been in decades due to the federal enforcement surge. What's interesting is, because they monitored all the major cities in the world, crime reports also show that Chicago had 2,168 killings in that town last year, compared to only 268 murders in all of Florida's major cities combined.
Wow.
And just because of Trump derangement, No federal troops in that state. They are banned by the mayor of Chicago, who's a black man, and most of these deaths are to black men and black women.
Right. Caused by
black men.
Yes.
And black women. Not the guns.
Yeah.
It's caused by the people who are most of the time illegally possessing them to begin with.
Well, in every case, they were illegally possessing them to begin with. I defy you to show me one case where they legally possessed it.
Yeah, the shooter just a couple of weeks ago here in Tucson had no business with that gun that he shot out inside the Empire Pizza 2 weekends ago.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's a crazy situation where the government, where Trump has brought troops in to make those cities safer. They become safer, and Memphis is a case in point. Crime down there, murder crime down there, 60% since federal troops were in Memphis.
And I think the numbers I saw said it was like 4% of the population, were the bad guys committing 90% of these problems. Right. Put those guys away. Watch what happens. I remember going to D.C. And being told, yeah, you don't want to be walking around here at night. And now, you can easily walk around and not really worry that much. Now, you're always going to worry, but you're not going to worry as much as you were prior.
Yeah, and our nation's capital ought to, by definition, be a safe place.
The safest place.
Yeah, absolutely.
Be the safest place.
Arizona's fake electors case dropped by the Attorney General. Katie Hobbs officially picks ex-Republican Mesa Mayor Dave Giles as her running mate for lieutenant governor. This guy is such a fake independent, such a fake Republican. He was never a Republican when he was mayor of Mesa. It's what helped him get elected. He never ran that city as a Republican normally would. And did all kinds of crazy things while he was there. And now he's the next in line should Katie Hobbs not be able to complete her term of office.
Wow. Go back to the fake electors case being dropped. I didn't read anything about that. What happened?
Well, the case has been going on now for 4 years plus. And the judge had ruled against Chris Mays to prosecute these people. Which that would have been an unjust prosecution of them, and they've already paid dearly in their defense all these years. But the judge Chris Mays finally said they're dropping the case for now. Enough's enough. We'll see what happens. It's possible to reopen it. So we had some primaries yesterday. There's a guy.
Incredible.
There's a guy who looks like Urkel. This guy, David Crowley, who wins the Wisconsin.
Did I do that?
He's unbelievable, and he won that primary with a woman who just 2 weeks ago had a 20-point lead. He had actually stopped campaigning.
He had a 20-point lead. She had a 20-point lead yesterday morning.
Yeah, but I don't think it was ever a 20-point lead. Okay, and obviously she being the Thanksgiving Day hater didn't help her any when all that stuff came out. She'd been spending the last week and a half just explaining that, this is her favorite holiday. Clay Travis, who's on the radio, says, I think she actually confused Columbus Day with Thanksgiving Day. So who knows? Francesca Hong, a far-left DSA candidate who led in the opinion polls, as we said, defeated by David Crowley, a so-called, now they're calling him a moderate Democrat just to kind of, put lipstick on the bitch.
Right.
But
Pig.
He's a lefty, maybe not out as much as that. So knives will be out. Hassan Piker totally melts down over the Wisconsin election results. I love it when a guy like Piker goes out of his head.
Absolutely.
In Minnesota, Republican Lisa DeMuth will face off against Senator Amy Klobuchar for governor.
She beat out Mike Lindell.
Yeah. Well, that wasn't too hard. He was way far behind. Former ESPN sideline reporter Michelle Tafoya will square off against Tim Walz's goofy lieutenant governor and hijab-wearing Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan. Peggy's a real train wreck. She loved the burning of the tires every bit as much as Mrs. Waltz did. The stuff that she has said, they've kept under wraps, but it's all going to come out in this election.
Nice.
And I think that Michelle Tafoya is definitely going to give her a run for her money.
Well, let's go back to that for just a second before we move on. So here you are, you're a political...
Whatever.
At what point do they bring that stuff out so that she doesn't have a lot of time to counter it? Or do they bring it out early and let her look like a fool for trying to counter it?
Both.
Okay.
They're going to start early, and they're going to start hard, and they're going to continue going hard, and they're going to do that all the way to the election.
Okay.
There's some vulnerability that the Democrats have in these elections, and it's going to be a very interesting fall election season. I don't know what's going to happen. None of us do. We've been surprised in the past.
Sure.
But from the Washington Examiner, Kansas Democrat governor nominee suggested Jesus could have been a transgender person.
Is that because of his long hair?
Maybe so. Democrat gubernatorial nominee Cindy Holscher is facing Republican attacks over resurfaced social media posts in which she entertained the possibility that Jesus Christ could have been a transgender, injecting the culture war issue into the Kansas gubernatorial election. Kansas. You don't want to mess with Jesus Christ in Kansas.
No.
Okay? You don't want to be talking crazy talk. And Tallarico won't get away with it as he's been doing in Texas.
The tofu eating.
Yeah. And he just keeps doubling down on it. I don't think that's a winning kind of a strategy. So
you don't see any problem with Ken Paxton, or you do see a problem with him?
Well, look,
winning?
Ken Paxton has a lot of baggage.
Sure.
The thing with his wife and the impeachment efforts and so on. But he does seem to have solid support in that state by Republicans and independents. But I think with Tallarico, he's really just too far out there. And I'm not saying left. He's just out there, between the vegan and the what have you and all. They've got him on video, going back, 10 years.
Right. I've seen that.
And again, not that the legislature in Texas has that much clout anymore, but this guy served in the Texas legislature and really had no accomplishments to speak of all that period of time. And now he's running.
Yeah. One of the other stories that just came out I found fascinating. The decoy Air Force One.
Oh, yeah.
Trump gets on.
And the media is going crazy over this because they didn't break it first.
And not only that, the ones that were on Air Force One when Trump was shuttled off via the food service cart, they're pissed because they're saying, oh, so it's okay for us to get shot down, but not you to get shot down.
Well,
he's
the
the pretty
president.
much correct.
He's the president of the United States, and you're no longer flying on Air Force One when he leaves.
Absolutely. No, that was great.
Yeah, and I think he handled this with good humor yesterday.
I just do what they tell me to do.
And Jake Tapper was, pounding the desk over this thing as well.
Yeah, wonderful. Yeah. Wonderful. Keep it up, Mr. President.
Well, I think it's about time we close up, Eb.
Yeah, so thanks for joining us today with our guest Republican nominee. Well, no, where'd that come from? Bruce.
Wow.
Hey, Ken was great.
Ken Rapoza.
When it comes to strategic shipbuilding, that guy was cerebral, very intelligent. As usual, we always over-prepared for the show. Make sure you check him out. Make sure you check the website out. We're going to try and get him back on here again in the next 90 days or so if we can get the Jones Act thing repealed. All of our Inside Track podcasts are available on Live the Dream Media's Facebook Live page, YouTube, Apple, and X. Bruce?
Please tune in again next week. We have another great action-packed show for you with Wall Street Journal bestselling author Brian J. Jones on the U.S. Capitol and its history. Until then, this is Bruce Ash.
Eb Wilkinson.
We'll see you.